This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
Right now, there is an aggressive push against teaching American history in classrooms by conservatives. Let me rephrase that. Right now, there's a push by conservatives to not teach actual American history in classrooms. And the reason is because if the true story of America is told, people will have their eyes open. The scales will fall from their eyes, and they will see the truth for themselves about the dirty parts of our history, about the parts of our founding fathers writing about equality and God creating us all in his image, that every man is created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident, Thomas Jefferson wrote, while he owned hundreds of slaves, some of which he was raping. Facts. Not wanted to be talked about or taught in classes by conservatives. Now, they're using critical race theory as the boogeyman, but that's what it is. So much so, I'm going to play a clip here from Kim Klacik, a failed congressional candidate out of Maryland, Baltimore, that they will go as far as to rewrite history in their own image. This clip is, first of all, the chyron on this clip is that liberals are paving the way for a race war and class war, while Kimberly Klacik, I'm going to let you hear it from her own stupid mouth, but Kimberly Klacik says that Martin Luther King Jr. would be hard right conservative if he was around today. Watch this.
And speaking of this whole narrative, AOC weighed in on it all. Of course, she likes to weigh in on all this stuff. And she tweeted this yesterday. Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered for confronting white supremacy. Today, GOP, who are putting the very Voting Rights Act King worked for, want you to believe he'd support mass disenfranchisement and teaching of racial ignorance. They should read the books they're trying to ban. What is your response to this tweet?
No, so AOC has no idea what she's talking about, as usual, especially when it comes to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He is famous for saying, don't judge someone by their color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He would be totally against what we see today. If Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was here today, he'd probably be a very hard right conservative, considering what we see nowadays. They fought so hard when it came to the civil rights for us to be on an equal footing, and they're taking us backwards. And when I say they, I say progressives like AOC. So she actually has no idea what she's talking about again.
MLK would be a hard right conservative. That's why he was under investigation by the U.S. government, the FBI at the time, for being a socialist, being a communist sympathizer. That's how hard right he was. And then the other thing is this constant refrain from conservatives about the only quote, the only thing they know that Martin Luther King Jr. ever said was about the content of the character, not the color of the skin. That's all that they know. I've got a quote here. I'm going to read something that MLK actually wrote himself. When I suggest that you buy books and read books, it's not just, I read them too. That's why. And this isn't like a long thing. This is the letter from Birmingham jail. It's very, very brief. I'm going to read from this in a minute, but I want to share with you, because we got the receipts. We know. All this is a repeat. History repeats itself. You hear that all the time. This is just a repeat of a past, a time past. I've got polling from 1963 to 1966. This is from 1961, actually, about the Freedom Riders, polling white people on what they thought of the movement back then. The same movement that's continuing today with Black Lives Matter, that white people have a problem with now. It's not effective. It's hurting the cause more than it's helping. The same complaints you hear about Black Lives Matter today, the same complaints you hear about teaching critical race theory or using critical race theory as a basis for teaching kids, teaching human beings, not just children, but educating ourselves on our history. The same complaints that you hear today are right here. White people had the same problems with it then. And now they've tried to whitewash it and say that MLK is some kind of a conservative hero. A hard right conservative figure. From 1961, polling of white people. Do you approve or disapprove of what the Freedom Riders are doing? 61% disapprove. Do you think sit-ins at lunch counters, freedom buses, and other demonstrations by Negroes will hurt or help the Negroes' chances of being integrated in the South? 57% of white people said, it's going to hurt. I will also mention 57% of white people were wrong. Were grossly wrong. Because it is due to the direct action, the peaceful protests that took place, that we got to where we are today. Here's another one. Whites on demonstrations by Negroes. This is 1966. All in all, do you feel the demonstrations by Negroes on civil rights have helped more or hurt more in the advancement of Negro rights? 85% thought that it hurt. And this is, note, white respondents only. So 85% of white people in 1966 were wrong about the issue and where it would lead. And now, you hear the phrase, don't be on the wrong side of history. That's what we're talking about. These people were on the wrong side of history. Don't be these idiot white people, 85% of whom thought that these demonstrations were hurting the cause. And then here's one from the March on Washington, the very thing that she's quoting with the content of the character, not the color of the skin. The March on Washington in 1963, August of 1963. I wonder what white people thought of a mass demonstration like that. What are your feelings about this proposed mass civil rights rally? 60% unfavorable, 23% favorable. And then, of course, we'll end with opinions about Martin Luther King Jr. himself. These polls run from 1963, the year of the March on Washington, through 64, 65, and 66. Starts at 37% totally unfavorable, up through August of 1966. 63% of people had a totally unfavorable opinion of him. It's exactly what we witness today relative to racial justice, relative to these figures who lead Black Lives Matter and the movement itself. Don't be on the wrong side of history. Learn your history. And I'm going to read this to further elucidate how Martin Luther King Jr. felt and thought about things. It's not just the content of the character remark. One remark out of thousands and thousands and thousands of words that he wrote and spoke on the matter. This is from page 13 to 14 if you have this particular version. While he's in jail for advocating for equal civil rights for Black Americans. First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. He's not gravely disappointed with conservatives and Klansmen. Moderates, white moderates, he's disappointed with. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, quote, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Hard right conservative. Kim Klacik on One America News. I'll end with this. Final 2 sentences. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. Stow it with your rewriting of history, your fever dream of what America is and should be. The truth is the truth. The facts are the facts. American history is what it is. Martin Luther King was not and would not be a hard right conservative. He would not be a fan of Donald Trump, the authoritarian wonderkin. He was fighting he gave his life fighting for freedom of black and brown Americans. How dare you, Kim Klacik, how dare you? And all of your conservative cohort trying to whitewash and rebrand the hard work, the sweat, the tears, the literal blood that was shed to make a country where you can get on One America News and spew your lies and filth. Buy this, it's like $11 or something, maybe less. It might be $5 on Amazon. There's no affiliate link. Just search Letter from Birmingham Jail and read this. Have this out. I'd love to know what you think. You can call, leave me a brief voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, you can always email me, daily@dollemore.com. This is a topic I would love to know what you think about. Follow me on social media. You can connect with me there and tweet at me there. We can have a discussion there. Instagram, I guess that's less useful for discussion, but Twitter, I appreciate you. Listen, if I bring you any value at all, I would appreciate you considering supporting my work, helping produce my work here on the platform. You can become a channel member by clicking the join button below. You can go over to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast and support my work there. If I bring you some value, but somebody brings you more value, support that person. You know, there's a lot of commentators and a lot of people who do what I do. And they, just like me, are in a position right now that it is vital to have the support to continue doing what we do. So you're not reliant solely upon corporate media. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Until then, be genuine and take care of one another.